Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all the Mr. Olympia winners in history. The judging criteria for this video was rather simple, as I was only judging their influence or the impact of their physiques. Some factors considered were how many Olympia wins they had, proportions and symmetry, aesthetics, muscular development, and what they have done for the sport. I want to say that both criteria were equally as important when deciding where to place each contestant, which I think you guys will notice. Before this video starts, I just want to ask if you guys would take a moment to like and subscribe, as I am extremely close to 1,000 subscribers now, and I would really appreciate it. With that all being said, let's get into this list. Starting off the list in the 17th place spot is the one-time Mr. Olympia Chris Dickerson. He had a very balanced physique with above-average legs and solid conditioning. There was nothing really outstanding about his physique, and that's why he doesn't place any higher on this list. Taking a look at his physique, he never had a wow factor to him, and he had average muscle insertions and extremely pointy elbows, which really takes away from his aesthetics in my opinion. Overall, Dickerson had a great balanced physique, but he can't necessarily compete with the other Olympia champions. Furthermore, his impact in bodybuilding was rather short, as he was only a champion for 1 year. Brandon Curry takes the 16th place spot on this list. His 2019 Mr. Olympia physique was one that shouldn't be slept on, as he brought a tiny waist, arguably his best legs, and solid conditioning. Curry always had these bubbly round muscle bellies that filled his upper body, and it really added to his aesthetic flow. He did have rather undersized legs in comparison to his massive upper body, which definitely messes with his flow a little bit. Furthermore, his 2019 Mr. Olympia victory is not appreciated as much as others, since many consider the lineup to have been weak that year. Regardless, Curry continuously brings top 5 placing packages to the Olympia stage, and I cannot wait to see what damage he'll do at the 2023 Mr. Olympia. In the 15th place spot is the first Mr. Olympia in history, Larry Scott. He brought massive arms to the Olympia stage that could definitely rival some of the current bodybuilders, having long insertions for his biceps and triceps that made them appear super full. Coming from the 60s, Larry had great aesthetics and proportions even in his legs for the time. The only flaw he had was his relatively wide waist, which definitely takes away from his aesthetic flow. Of course, Larry does not have the, modern conditioning, so he stands no chance against guys further down this list. However, being the first Mr. Olympia has, it's got to do something for him, and for that reason, coupled with his solid physique, he places respectably in 15th. Franco Columbu takes the 14th place spot on this list. Although he was only 5'5", Franco had great proportions and mass for his stature, having large arms with peaked biceps, a crazy back, and a thick chest. Of course, Franco does not have the same mass or condition as modern guys, a trend that you guys will definitely see for most of the golden era bodybuilders on this list, yet he possessed muscles that even rival modern day competitors. Moreover, his appearance in pumping iron gained him and the sport of bodybuilding lots of new fans, and so his influence over the sport was definitely notable. He did have a rather controversial Olympia win in 1981, which gave him a rather bad reputation since he looked really off that year, so 14th place is where he will land. In the 13th place spot is HADI CHOOPAN, the most recent Mr. Olympia winner. He possesses some of the best conditioning in the modern era, oftentimes outconditioning his more massive opponents. He has great quads, arms, and a solid back, not really having any real weak points. Hadi really isn't the tallest guy on stage, however, that hasn't seemed to stop him from winning in 2022. The real reason he only places 13th is really because he is still a current competitor who hasn't reached his best form. He still has time to impact the sport of bodybuilding in a more profound way and improve upon his physique, but for now, he places in a respectable 13th place. Dexter the Blade Jackson takes the 12th place spot. This one-time Mr. Olympia had one of the most impressive bodybuilding careers ever, having the most pro wins out of any professional bodybuilder in history. Furthermore, Dexter had a seriously long career, debuting at the Olympia in 1999 and finishing in 2020. He had amazing shape and flow, solid mass, and of course, ridiculous razor sharp conditioning. His late 2000s physiques were really the pinnacle of his career, in my opinion. And, he had virtually no weak points, and even later into his career, he continuously placed highly at the Olympia. Dexter influenced the sport of bodybuilding in a rather large way too, dethroning Jay Cutler in 2008, where he brought a near perfect physique. The only reason he doesn't really place any higher is because I think others had a slightly better physique or more influence on the sport. In the 11th place spot is Shawn Rhoden, the man who dethroned Phil Heath. That's right, guys. This guy defeated a prime Phil the Gut Heath. All jokes aside, Rhoden defeated a prime Phil Heath, apart from his gut, bringing a flawless package in 2018. Many will point out that his weak triceps and back kind of held him back a bit. However, his thin skin and condition, especially in the legs, were just world class that year. It almost seemed to be that he was like a second coming of Flex Wheeler, as he had great symmetry through his abdominal muscles and his physique as a whole, really. Unfortunately, he was never able to compete at the Olympia again, and that definitely took away from his potential impact on the sport. But to me, his flawless 2018 package does enough to place in 11th. Samir Banu, otherwise known as the Lion of Lebanon, takes the 10th place spot on this list. In 1983, this guy came and destroyed everyone from the back, literally. He had the best back by far up until that point, and it is still regarded as one of the best backs of all time. He also brought phenomenal conditioning, which could be seen in his extremely conditioned back. Moreover, his overall physique wasn't, overshadowed by his awesome back, as he featured a rather small waist, solid arms, and great legs. Unfortunately for him, Lee Haney would make his dreams of retaining the title impossible, which, definitely limited his potential impact on bodybuilding. Regardless, his impressive back changed the standards for bodybuilding, and for that reason, he deserves to begin the top 10. Frank Zane takes the ninth place spot, being arguably the most aesthetic bodybuilder in history. He never had, the insane mass or conditioning of others on this list, but had great lines and symmetry that made his physique shine. Furthermore, he was able to showcase his physique perfectly through his well-executed posing. I personally don't think he was the most genetically gifted bodybuilder of all time, or genetically gifted Olympian for that matter, but he had, rather average muscle insertions, things like that. But he pieced them together so well. He was pieced together flawlessly, in my opinion. So, even though Zayn lacked the mass and conditioning on guys on this list, he played a major role in influencing aesthetics in bodybuilding, which was something that really just not many did on this list. In eighth place is Big Ramy, one of the heaviest bodybuilders ever and possibly the heaviest Mr. Olympia of all time. Big Ramy is, really big, being over 300 pounds in the off season and close to 300 on stage. It took him a very long time to come into his own, but in 2020 he was able to put everything together and win the title. Ramy has freaky proportions, especially in the arms and legs, and they are just massive. Recently, though, Ramy has lost a lot of freak factor, as his back and arms have seemingly deteriorated and his quads have glaring weak points. Moreover, his influence in bodybuilding was never the most impactful, however, his physique alone was enough to have him placed within the top 8. I just hope that he can fix his weak points and come to the Mr. Olympia in 2023 with a dominant physique. In seventh place is Sergio the Myth Oliva, the man who I believe had some of the best genetics of all time. He had full, longly inserted muscle bellies, an extremely small waist, and overall insane mass for his time. He was definitely ahead of his time for that matter, in terms of arm and leg development, and even displayed solid conditioning back then. Of course, his mass and conditioning are no match for modern standards. However, his, legendary golden era status places him in a respectable 7th place. In 6th place is Jay Cutler, who most certainly was a cut above the rest. Jay was most famous for dethroning Ronnie Coleman in 2006, which gained him tons of fans and support in the bodybuilding world. many fans still fondly remember Ronnie and Jay's early 2000 battles, which was, in my opinion, the best rivalry in the sport. His physique also lived up to the hype, as he had great arms and legs and a solid back. He never had any glaring weak points. However, his back was never an outstanding body part and definitely deteriorated with age. The reason he doesn't place any higher is really because everyone ahead of him on this list has won more Olympias. That being said, he had one of the best physiques and continues to be one of the best ambassadors of the sport. Dorian Yates takes the fifth place spot, being the first person to bring real mass to the Olympia stage. In 1993, Dorian Yates presented the freakiest package the world had ever seen up until that point, having the best conditioning by far, and of course the most mass. He possessed the best back in bodybuilding history, and some of the grainiest granite-like condition anyone has ever had. Unfortunately, he continuously injured and tore muscles, which slowly threw off his physique. Regardless, he ushered in the mass monster era, as many would say, and really highlighted the heavy-duty training style that seems to be resurfacing today. Yates still promotes bodybuilding and has done a lot for the sport, and it would just be wrong to not have him in the top 5. Phil the Gift Heath takes the fourth place spot on this list. I mean, he wasn't called the Gift for no reason, guys. He possessed some of the craziest 3D round muscle bellies ever. When he was in his prime, nobody could stop him, and he featured one of the best backs and some of the best arms ever. Throughout his career, he did have some glaring flaws, like his distended midsection or narrow clavicles. However, his overall physique was just so dominant that even flaws like that don't necessarily matter. Phil still promotes the sport today and has had a major impact on bodybuilding as a whole, regularly, interacting with the community and speaking on current issues and subjects in the sport. Starting off the top 3 is Lee Haney. While others on this list absolutely beat Haney's physique, it is no question that he was more dominant during his time than anyone before him on this list. He won 8 consecutive Olympia titles, absolutely dominating the competition with his tiny waist, crazy flaring lats, and well-developed arms and legs. He entered and ended his Olympia reign as a champion, not losing his title once, and retired at a rather young age for a competitive bodybuilder. Furthermore, his stimulate not annihilate training philosophy has been adopted by many, as he continues to swear by its efficacy. His 8 dominant consecutive Olympia wins are really enough to put him in the top 3, and his continuous support for the sport is like a cherry on top. In second place, controversially, is Ronnie the King Coleman. Many of you may be, unhappy with the King placing second. However, just let me explain. In terms of physique, he wins easily. However, in terms of influence, there is one bodybuilder who was slightly better. Ronnie presented some of the freakiest physiques of all time during his career. For instance, in 1999, he brought a near-flawless physique with a small waist, huge arms, and legs, and, just an insane back, with razor-sharp conditioning to top all of that. In 2003, for instance, he brought the most massive physique I've ever seen in terms of proportion, as he completely dwarfed everyone on that stage. Ronnie, really had it all, and in my opinion is one of the most genetically gifted bodybuilders, if not the most genetically gifted bodybuilder of all time. On top of all this, he is a great ambassador of the sport, regularly attending shows and continually creating bodybuilding related content. There really are not any negatives to Ronnie Coleman. However, the first place winner just outdoes him just a little bit in my opinion. Well, if you guys didn't see it coming already, the best Olympia winner of all time, in my opinion, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Of course, up against a guy like Ronnie or Jay, Arnold, he stands no chance in terms of physique. To be fair, though, for his time, he had great condition and size, and had some of the best biceps and the best chest ever, in my opinion. He did have flaws like undersized legs at certain competitions and a rather wide waist. However, the reason he places first is mainly because of his impact on the sport. He was really the person who put bodybuilding onto the map, firstly with movies like Pumping Iron, and later on with his overall acting and political careers. People became fascinated with his past bodybuilding life, and it brought tons of new fans into the sport. On top of that, the Arnold Classic has become the second most prestigious bodybuilding title, and Arnold continues to endorse and support bodybuilding in many ways. He has completely changed the sport through his legendary bodybuilding status and status in other fields for that matter, and really defeats anyone on this list by a mile in that aspect. I'm not claiming that he had the best Olympia winning physique, which could be a future video. If you guys want to see that, let me know down below. Rather, he brought the best combination of physique and influence, which led him to this first place win. So that about does it for this video. Please let me know down below if you guys enjoyed or if you would rearrange this list in any way. With that said, please consider liking and subscribing, of course, and thank you for watching.